What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Hawk Talk on Melrose YouTube page, where we are going to talk some Hawks. But before we do that, make sure you subscribe, like the video, and share with your friends. That is all we ask, and let's roll. All right, here we go. Coming back at you with a win from the Hawks, 38-21 yesterday. This is Hawk Talk on Melrose. I am Collin, joined today with Tyler. Didn't look pretty, but we got the job done, and we are now entering Big Ten play, playing Minnesota this weekend. It's going to be a big-time game. We'll get more into that later in this episode. Yeah. So I want to start this episode off kind of where we ended the last episode, and it was where I was discussing how I'm having way more fun watching this offense, and I get it. It doesn't take much considering how bad it has been, but watching the running attack, primarily Kaleb Johnson, it's so much fun to watch. Now, yes, it's not the sexy thing. Passing the football is a sexy thing. It's like taking a three-point shot in the NBA, or in basketball, I should say. You're starting to see the glimpses of what this offense can be. Now, it's nowhere close, right? The passing game still needs a lot of work. I'm not really sold on the quarterback, which we can talk about here in a little bit. But for the most part, I'm liking what I'm seeing. Now, it's only been 3 games, and the competition's only going to get harder, but we're off to a good start. And there's 2 stats that I thought was pretty impressive. Chris Hassel tweeted this out. Iowa leads the country with more than 30-plus yard runs with 6 so far this year. That's actually, that's incredible. And then this one from Mitch Fick, which is, this one's truly incredible. Iowa is averaging 243 rushing yards per game. And I get it's a young season, only 3 games. Iowa's total offense last year, he averaged 235 yards per game. So we are averaging more rushing yards than we did the entire offense last year. And obviously it's led by the leading rusher so far in college football, Kaleb Johnson, in 2.5 games, mind you not. Did not play in the first 2 quarters in the Illinois State game. And he's still at, I think I want to say 479 total yards right now. And he is the leading rusher in college football, which is incredible.
479 yards, 6 touchdowns. I mean, he's got more rush yards and you know, the same amount of touchdowns or more than I think, or the same amount of touchdowns he did as a freshman, which we all thought was a hell of a start to his young career. And then more rush yards than he had all season last year, Collin. He is him, as you would say. I mean, he is the catalyst for this run game right now. And honestly, you know, he's going to get all the attention. And I do think, though, you know, you see like guys like Kamari Moulton yesterday, even Jazz Patterson, who finally saw a couple touches, and he looked really good as well. We have a really good stable of backs to spell Kaleb Johnson when he's not in there. But yeah, no, he is unreal right now, for sure.
Well, with like Jazz, man, like he's just fresh. Like he hasn't played at all. So he has fresh legs. And he does. You know, that's a good thing moving forward here. LaShawn Williams, to me, he doesn't have that extra. Yes. And I'm still wondering if he's still, I know he was hurt during fall camp, if that's still lingering a little bit, because he just doesn't seem like the LaShawn Williams like last year, because he was really good for us last year. Like I'm envisioning that like Wisconsin game when he had that long run. That was like that extra burst that he had. I just feel like he doesn't have that this year yet. Now we might see it. And that's one of those things where, you know, if LaShawn Williams doesn't get many carries, there might be a game where we bring him in there and he's fresh as hell and he's going to go off for us. So yeah, no, it's a good thing going. It's one of those things where we do have to take a step back a little bit and realize, okay, we played Illinois State. We played an Iowa State team that was without some linebackers, and then we played Troy. And going into that game, we talked about how Troy's rush defense wasn't very good. So I do think as we now enter Big Ten play and we start playing some better front sevens, Kaleb Johnson's not going to, you know, put up those numbers every single game, right? Or the other running backs. Like there's going to be some games where the running just it's not quite there. But it's still a good sign though. And at least moving forward, like we know we at least have that.
We always said like, we have to get back to running the football. That's Iowa's identity. And we have more than ran the football these first 3 weeks. And yeah, there's not much more to say. Kaleb Johnson is unfreaking believable. The explosive plays that he had. It's not just like he's getting 40 attempts. He's around 25 carries, Collin. I mean, he's averaging 10 yards a carry or whatever it is.
It's crazy.
And 175 to 200 yards a game. I mean, they're explosive plays. I don't know if we'll transition to this or not, but I just wrote down a couple of things. Obviously, a couple of takeaways. We just mentioned that we're 3 weeks in now. Obviously, number one, Kaleb Johnson running the football. I mean, that's something that you can lean on throughout the season, and hopefully it continues to have success.
Yep.
Number two, and I know we've been pretty positive. Obviously, the thing that worries me a little bit through 3 games, though, we have yet to figure out really how to play a full game of football. If you really think about it,
It's
I
true.
mean, you look at Illinois State, 6-0 in the first half, not a good first half. We figured it out in the second half. Iowa State, first half is good, 13-0. Second half, we only put up 6, and then we're down 14-10 against Troy, and then we finally get it going in the second half. So that's one of the things that I noticed that concerns me a little bit is we have yet to really put 4 quarters of good, consistent football together. I mean, obviously, got to really start getting off to some better starts and obviously some better ends and put together good 4 quarters here because we're going to be playing Minnesota next week. So,
yeah, it's one of those things where at some point, you need to be able to put together an entire game's worth of, it doesn't have to be great the entire game.
No.
I mean, not every team is going to be great the entire game, but you cannot be inconsistent like that where it's like a roller coaster ride where it's like
Correct.
one quarter really good, next quarter really bad. You just can't let that happen. You got to be a little more consistent for sure. And the passing game to me needs to be better. I think we talked about this going into the season that we thought that the passing game was going to be the thing that was going to take the most time. And that I think there was going to be a lot of growing pains with that. And so far it's kind of right where I kind of maybe expected to be. Maybe it's a little bit better than I thought, but it's still not quite there. To me personally, I just think with Cade, and we're at the game yesterday, right? If you didn't watch the game, you look at Cade's stats and you're probably thinking, I'm going to actually go to his stats right now. 19 for 23. That's like 83% completion percentage, 176 yards. Didn't have a touchdown, but didn't have an interception either. And you're sitting there probably thinking like, I can't believe you're even about ready to say this. But like just watching him play, I just don't know if I'm sold on him being the guy for us at quarterback. His mechanics are just
scares
off.
A little bit. Yeah.
Still throws on his back foot. I don't know if you saw this after the game. Obviously, being at the game, we didn't see this or we couldn't tell. But he was throwing balls without using his hands on the laces of the football, which is really weird. Like, I don't understand that.
Yeah, I saw that, and I love how that's like a story now too. It's like you talk about bad feet, right? You talk about not stepping into throws. The arm strength, right, has been an issue. Maybe that's what you were going to hint at. And then now the laces thing. It's like, dude, like just be fundamentally sound, and that's going to set you up for at least some success, right? You set your feet, you step into throws, and you throw with the laces. I mean, that's basic stuff.
Missing guys when they're open. So like yesterday, Luke Lachey wide open in the end zone.
And I didn't see that at the game, but your brother had texted you, and then you obviously see the replay after the game, and you're like, wow.
And the thing is he was looking right at him. Like,
well, apparently I saw somebody tweeted, and the primary person that the ball was supposed to go to was the flat, which was the tight end. And I guess he just stared down the tight end in the flat the whole time who was covered and never looked at the seam for Lachey. And it's like, you got to keep your eyes downfield, dude.
Yep.
Got to look up.
We ended up turning the ball over on downs there because the setup, I guess like if he would have ended up getting the first down, it is what it is, but he didn't. And then we went for it on 4th and 1 and we didn't get it.
Right.
But this is now numerous times where guys have been open and he misses them. Last week it was Gill in the corner of the end zone. That stuff, like you just can't let that happen. And so, yes, you look at his stat line and that's a pretty good stat line, right? But it's things that you see outside of the stat line that gives you a little bit of a feeling of, I just don't know as we go through this season if he is a guy for us. Brendan Sullivan, we saw him yesterday. I thought it was great to see him at least incorporate him a little bit because at the end of the day, we know Kirk, like he's not going to make a change. He didn't even make a change last year with Deacon Hill. So I love that we're at least incorporating Sully because he just adds that different dynamic for this team, especially in the red zone. I think it's honestly, whoever thought of that idea, I'm sure it's probably Tim Lester. Great idea of, hey, let's bring in Brendan Sullivan in the end or in the red zone, 1st and goal at the 5-yard line where, okay, now defenses have to account for Brendan Sullivan who can run. So if we're doing a read option, if we're doing anything like that, we got to take him into account. Now, I hope as we move forward here that if this continues to happen, like we have some passing plays out of it, right? Because you don't want to have a defense where every time Brendan comes in, it's just a running play. And it's like, well, we already know the tendency. You got to be able to throw out of that as well. So you got to trust that, hey, trust that Brendan Sullivan can make that throw as well. I know he ended up throwing that ball to that tight end for the touchdown yesterday, but that was more of just like read option. And he was just there and he just threw it to him.
Out of that RPO,
yeah. Like Brendan could have easily just ran it there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I love that. And hey, by the way, so far, 2 of my bold predictions have so far been true. Number 1, I said, I think Iowa is going to average around, or if not better than 4.5 yards per carry. So far, that has been true, but that obviously could change as the year goes on. Hopefully not. But my second thing was, I think Cade McNamara is going to start this entire year unless there's an injury. But I said, I do think in certain packages, we will bring in Brendan Sullivan. And we saw that yesterday. We brought him in certain packages. Now, the next thing I want is maybe not just the red zone, but maybe there's a drive where, okay, Cade starts the drive off. We get a few first downs. Okay, bring in Brendan Sullivan for 2 plays, like something different. Do something where like the defense, like, oh boy, okay, we got to change things up a little bit just to kind of keep them on their heels. That's the next thing that I want to see. Once again, it's one of those things. Cade's going to start. Like, it's just, it is what it is. And it's, if he can improve those mechanics, not throwing on his back foot, right? Things like that. Like, I'm okay with him starting. It's just, when I see those type of things, it makes me nervous. So if he's going to continue to start, that's fine and all, but give Sullivan some chances. And we saw that yesterday in the red zone, but I'm hoping that we kind of take that a next step further and we start seeing him outside of the red zone from here or there. You know, maybe it's just a drive here, a drive there. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. And honestly, with Cade, I think, you know, you talk about the mechanics and everything, and I'll take it one step further with Cade, and it's a combination, I think, of Cade and probably Tim Lester. And I know we've talked about it, but not getting our best playmakers the ball these last couple of weeks, to me, I know he was efficient yesterday, but to get Kaleb Brown the ball one time for, 18 yards is unacceptable.
Yeah.
Yeah. To get Lachey the ball, three catches, 25 yards, it's Troy. It's Troy. And then obviously Iowa State, both of those guys went 0 for 0 catches, 0 yards. We've got to, find a way to scheme open those guys. Obviously, we did that. Cade just didn't throw the ball, didn't see, or decided not to throw the ball to Lachey for a touchdown. And then, Kaleb Brown, what did I tell you? I literally next to you in the stands, I go, gee, this is so weird. You throw the ball to Cade McNamara and he gets a catch and it's 18 yards. Like, we got to get the ball to him. He's a stud. And so that is a step further with Cade that, I think he's got to get those guys involved. Obviously, Jacob Gill has a really good connection with him, and I love that because I think Jacob Gill is really coming into his own. But getting those other guys involved, and then obviously you touched on it, the Brendan Sullivan thing. I mean, that, again, Kirk mentioned after the game, just getting your best players in the game is huge. Whether it's, I guess if it's going to be in these goal-to-go situations, it adds another dimension to this offense that the defense and now Minnesota has to account for next week and prepare for.
Yep. So I was going to bring up the Kaleb Brown situation too a little bit later in this episode, but since you brought it up, I'm just going to touch on it because to me, it just doesn't make much sense because you saw last year as the year went on towards the end of the season, even though we were still bad, Kaleb Brown was at least like a breath of fresh air for us because he did make plays from time to time for us. And you could tell like this guy is pretty damn good. He's the highest rated wide receiver that we've ever gotten. Yeah. And we got to start utilizing him more. He is capable, and I said this on the last episode, like even if it's jet sweeps, even if it's wide receiver screens, we got to start utilizing him. I want to see him out there with Jacob Gill almost every single snap.
Yes.
Now, yesterday, I did see Dane Howard and Jerry Bowie out there a couple times. Jerry Bowie had a nice catch, and they're really good at run blocking. And so, like, I don't mind them being out there either. But, like, there are certain plays where I would love to see Jacob Gill and Kaleb Brown out there. Reese Vanderzee, so far he's had a good true freshman year, right? Especially that first game. But, he is a true freshman after all. And these last 2 games, you're starting to kind of see that, right? He's not really been in the picture I don't know if did he end up recording a catch yesterday?
No.
I guess we can look right here. No, I don't think he did. Yeah, no, zero catches. But
and I think he only had one catch against Iowa State. So I mean,
yeah.
he had a great game against Illinois State, and I think obviously defenses have prepared for him a little bit more, and obviously it's a true freshman. Like
Yep.
He's still coming into his own, and you can't expect a huge performance from him. And so I agree. I think if he's going to be out there, we got to utilize him. We got to get him the ball, and he's got to make plays. Otherwise, I mean, we have Kaleb Brown. Like we know what we have in Kaleb Brown.
So Kaleb Brown, finished with one catch for 18 yards. You talk Luke Lachey too. That's one thing. We got to get that number up. 3 receptions, 25 yards. I mean, he's an NFL caliber tight end. We got to start figuring out ways to get him the ball. But yes, Jacob Gill has been a nice surprise for us. I was pretty excited when we got him because I thought it was a very underrated pickup for us. Not many people talked about it at the time, and I thought it was a good pickup. I mean, he's a Big Ten caliber wide receiver who has some experience playing the Big Ten. He just kind of got buried at the depth chart at Northwestern because he had a lot of injury issues, and you're starting to see what he is made of. Had 5 catches for 44 yards, has 12 receptions this year, which is more than he has had ever at Northwestern in his previous 3 seasons. So that's been a very nice surprise for us. Before we switch to the defense, though, just looking at the total yards, we finished with 462 total yards. Man, that is really cool to see. 178 passing yards, 284 rushing yards. Third down completion percentage or conversion rate, I should say, 7 for 13. So about 50%. That's kind of where you want to be at. So that's really good.
Yep.
And then I am going to go to the drives now. And, it kind of looks kind of like the Illinois State game, right? Like you look at the second half here, 3 touchdowns in 5 series. That's good. We opened up the game, just not very good. We punted the football, even though we ended up getting a few first downs. It's all about sustaining drives. And then that second trip, we had 8 plays, 60 yards, and unfortunately we turned the ball over. But once again, that should have been a touchdown of Luke Lachey there. But then we get a touchdown and then field goals. So not bad. But we also have to keep in perspective that this is Troy. So we should be, it's not better than this, right? Going up against Troy. Going into this game, for me, and I didn't really touch on this the last podcast, and I probably should have. But for me, like what I wanted to see out of this game is, yes, I want to see the run game continue to be good as we now get into Big Ten play. But I wanted to see a little bit more in the passing game. Like this would have been a game going back to Kaleb Brown. Like let's get Kaleb Brown going before we enter Big Ten play, right? Yeah. Let's take a few deep shots. Now you brought that up to me. You looked at me yesterday and you're like, have we done like a deep shot yet? And this was like maybe in the 3rd or 4th quarter. And I looked at you and I think I was actually being serious when I was like, I just don't think they trust Cade McNamara being able to throw the ball downfield because he probably would underthrow it and it'd probably be an interception. So, I'm actually being serious, like when I say that, because we have yet to do like a deep shot down the field.
Yeah. When you said that, I actually was like, I thought obviously, you think I'm like, oh yeah, ha ha ha. But then it's like, no, we've seen a few times he's tried to throw it downfield and it's not very far. Right. So it's a valid point that you make. And I do think though, there has to be an element of vertical passing in the offense because the horizontal stuff, good teams are going to be able to cover that up, right? There's good defenses we're about to play. And if you can't stretch anybody and there's no threat vertically, like we always talk about, then that is going to prevent Kaleb Johnson from having a good day because everybody's going to be up at the line of scrimmage, right? So, I mean, hell, Troy, we'll get to the defense. They stretched us vertically a couple of times. Yeah. And, so...
Before we get to the defense, though, I do want to show just team stat rankings. So right now, total offense, we are sitting at 54th in the country at 419 yards per game. That's pretty good. I'll
take that
I'll take that
day of the week. Yeah.
Scoring offense, we are sitting at 58th in the country at 32.3 points per game. I will take that.
Take that every day.
And then rushing offense, obviously Kaleb Johnson leading the way, but we are sitting at 18th in the country in total rushing yards at 243. So I will gladly take that as well. So, it was all about, Tim Lester talked about this before the year with Chad Lastico on his podcast. It's about slashing the numbers in half. It's kind of like a realistic goal. We're at like 130 at almost every single statistical category known to man. We're at like 130 or 125. And so can you cut that in half? Can you be at like 70-ish? And so far, we're a little above that, but we also have to keep in mind like that number's probably going to go down here a little bit as we, start playing some tougher defenses as the year goes on. But so far, so good. All right, now let's switch to the defense because, man, we got to stop giving up these deep balls. It's now 3 times this year. I think Chris Hassel also had a tweet out. I didn't write it down, but he talked about, I think Iowa's leading the country in 3 long balls. And that doesn't happen with Iowa's defense. Phil Parker, this is something we just pride ourselves on. And it's now happened 3 times, 1 against Iowa State and 2 now against Troy. Got to clean that up.
And I even wrote it down too. And I know this had no impact on the game. And it was only a 37-yard pass completion in the first game at Illinois State. I think it was the wide receiver, Xavier Lloyd. But like, even at that, like, and the game was out of hand, I'm pretty sure. But it was like, oh shit. Like, that was kind of surprising. Right? Like, we don't usually give up that type of thing. It was a one-on-one. It was on Nestor, but it was still kind of like, it stuck in my mind as like, oh, damn, like they actually got that. And it seemed to have foreshadowed what was about to come with the Jalen Knowles 75-yarder and then the Devontae Ross 260-plus yard touchdown receptions yesterday. And I didn't think this would ever be a major concern for this team, but preventing explosive passing plays is now a concern for this Iowa defense. I have seen it too many times for it not to be a concern. Now, do I trust Phil Parker? Yes. Do I think that that's something that's fixable? Yes. But I don't know if it's a personnel thing. I don't know if it's a scheme thing. Something's got to change because teams are now exploiting our back end, which I thought we were pretty, shored up on that end. And Jamari, it's not Jamari. Jamari's been fantastic. I mean, he has been locked down pretty much every single game.
And he wasn't on the field on that second long ball, by the way.
Correct. TJ Hall doesn't look like he belongs out there right now. That's a different story. I mean, I know he gets picked on this last game, but I mean, he had a rough day yesterday.
Yeah. And I should have went back and I should have watched both again. I didn't look at them clearly to see was it all of Hall's fault or was it?
I don't know because the camera
safety
angle's weird because at the time the camera angle pans to the wide receiver, the guy's just wide open. There's nobody within 10, 15 yards of him. And Hassel said it after the game. He's like, the plays almost looked identical.
Yeah, it was like deja vu.
Yeah. Same player, obviously, and same side of the field, right? And so I don't know if it's actually the same play or not, but TJ Hall got picked on, and it's for sure him. But there could have been a safety to blame as well.
Yeah, where we sit out in the stadium too, like we saw just like right in front of us. But both times, and we did a pretty good job yesterday in getting pressure. But both of those, there was no pressure, so the quarterback had all the time in the world to set up that play, and it was like slow motion. Watching the quarterback, and you're like, oh boy, he's throwing it downfield. And then you look down and you see a guy wide open, and it's
both times I said, like during the flight of the ball, I was like, oh my God, he's wide open. And sure enough, he's just catching it in stride. So yeah, no pressure on those. If you're gonna sit back and play coverage, you hope to get some pressure, but with the 4 guys up front, and it obviously didn't happen those 2 times.
Once again, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see the drive summary here, and you take away those 2 long balls, and this is something where it's like you pride yourself on this, going into this game, not giving up long balls because it's the difference between winning and losing. Now, luckily, it was against Troy where, you should still be able to win. But like you're playing Minnesota next week, like you can't let this happen. You cannot let 2 drives like that because outside of those 2 drives, you can see it on the screen. I mean, they couldn't do shit. I mean, their longest drive was a 31-yard drive. Our defense, for the most part, played pretty well yesterday. Like I said, I liked how we got pressure. Max Llewellyn, Brian Allen just going nuts. It was good to see. Yes. But it was those 2 long balls that just put a damper into Iowa's defense yesterday. And like I said, it's something that we got to fix. I told you yesterday, I'm glad it happened against Troy because it's a learning lesson. It's a teaching lesson because we cannot let this happen. And at least with Troy, it's like, once again, you should still win regardless. Yeah. And even though there was times yesterday where it seemed like, oh boy, I was getting a little nervous in the stands, but we figured out a way to win. And
I mean, and that's where I'm at. It's like, if you look at the final score, you go, wow, that's 38-21. It was 24-21 going to the 4th quarter.
Yeah.
Like we got to be real. Like that that is scary stuff. I mean, I know it's Troy, and you still feel like at the end of it, it's like, oh, how are we going to lose this game? But I also felt that way against Iowa State, and I know Iowa State's not Troy, but you get the picture. Like, you don't want to let any team hang around in the fourth quarter, especially when, they're an inferior opponent like Troy, and so that definitely scared me. And then obviously, I'm sure we'll touch on it. I hear the special teams.
Yeah, the punt return.
Yeah, they
can't let that happen either.
They had a hang time of like it was like right at 3 seconds or 3.5 seconds, which is horrible hang time. And I know he's a freshman punter, and Kirk didn't blame him really after the game. He blamed like the coverage. I don't know. I look back at that. I'm like, man, you line drive that thing, and there's nobody within 10 yards of him yet because there's no hang time on it. So he's got a clear path to pick a side to which to run. And obviously he picked the left side, and there he went for a 70-some yard punt return. So gotta clean that stuff up, though. I mean,
Reese Dakin, he's been decent, but you could definitely tell, he's still a freshman.
Yeah.
And he's not Tory Taylor. Nor did we think he was going to be Tory Taylor. We were hoping like, can you be somewhat close to him? But, as a freshman, I don't think he's doing that bad of a job. But yes, that was not, you can't let that like a hang time of 3.2 seconds. It's just, you can't let that happen. And then right after that punt return, the decision by Kirk, which sparked a lot of views in the stands, of not going or trying to at least kick a field goal with 50 seconds left in a timeout. He explained after the game that was his decision. I think he was just, because
he said, why make a situation more worse than it already was? We're down by 4.
Which I agree, because you throw like an interception there or something, or you just do something stupid, then it's like even worse. But I don't know. It's like, it felt like you're almost like, it's like, dude, you do know who we're playing. We're playing Troy. Like it's almost like you're worried going up against Troy at that point. It's like, dude, like you have 50 seconds left. You have a timeout. You have a really good kicker that, you could set up even like a 55-yard field goal, and he's probably going to make it because he's been doing really good. And that field goal that he made yesterday, that would have been good for way more than what it was, watching the replay this morning of that. So I didn't really necessarily agree with that, but that's Kirk Ferentz for you. Like there's something that he's just always going to
live with.
Yeah, that's something we have to live with. But yeah, got to fix the long balls. And outside of that, you take that away, you take away the punt return, and I know those things happen, so you can't say this, but you take those away, that's a 38-0 ball game, and similar to the Illinois State game. And for the most part, a pretty productive day. Like I said, I still wish we would have seen a little bit more out of the passing game, because that's something where I felt like, okay, this is a great tune-up game going into Big Ten play. Let's get some more longer passes. Let's set up some stuff to get some momentum going into Big Ten. But at least the run game has continued that momentum. And Kaleb Johnson, I told you this at the tailgate yesterday, that this is before the game and we're 1-1 and we still have that bitter taste in our mouths from the Iowa State game. I said, well, at least we got something to look forward to every single week, and that's Kaleb Johnson, because he's so much fun to watch. And having him, at least, it's just something that I can look forward to now, like every single game, like just being able to watch him play and being able to watch him run. And if he continues this type of performance, which I don't think he's going to get 100 and some yards every single game, but even if he just keeps being very productive, this guy's off to the NFL after this year, which selfishly, I don't want that to happen. I want him to stay at Iowa, but he just looks like an NFL running back. And I thought about this morning that, man, like NFL teams are going to look at Kaleb Johnson. Not only does he have everything that it takes to be an NFL running back, but he's running in a system that he's going to be doing in the NFL more than likely, because most teams run kind of like a version of the Shanahan offense. And a lot of these run concepts, this run scheme is ran in the NFL. It's like the same exact thing. So he's going to go to any NFL team next year and have the body, have everything, have the makeup to be an NFL back, but then he's also going to be experienced in this type of offense, in this type of running concept. And I just thought, like today, I was like, man, like as we move forward, could Iowa start, maybe producing some more NFL backs? Because it just seems like, I think right now we have Tyler Goodson. That's the only one in the NFL. And prior to that, like it's been forever. Like we just don't really produce many NFL backs, but maybe that's something as the years go on where, we start getting some good running backs, and then you're in a system that has run the NFL, and it's an easy transition that maybe we start seeing some more Iowa players in the NFL at running back, almost kind of like what we see with the tight ends. I just thought about that this morning.
Yeah, I know you said that. Yeah, I think the game you're like, God, at this rate, he's gonna be off to the NFL, and I'm like, yeah, you're probably not wrong. The other thing would be though, obviously in the age of NIL and stuff like that, if you can pony up enough money, and depending on where he's gonna, be projected, he could make more in college. So, that's obviously a different aspect to it too. But yeah, no, you're exactly right. I think we hit on everything that we need to hit on, Collin. I think a lot of, like Kirk said, a lot of good things to take away from this game, and obviously the first 3 weeks, but obviously a lot of things you have to clean up. And now we're in Big Ten play. Now we're on the road, right? First road game of the year in a hostile environment.
Big time game.
Chris Hassel said it, and I usually don't always agree with everything that he says, but I think this is a must-win for Iowa.
It is. It's 100% a must-win because you're not winning the next game at Ohio State. So
correct.
You don't win on Saturday.
And I think to go 2-3 in your first 5 games is a major letdown.
Yeah,
I really do.
It is. You go into that Washington game 2-3, you just can't let that happen. Like, this is honestly a must-win game. If we would have beat Iowa State, it still would have been a huge game.
I still would have felt that, but like,
it's not. Yeah. It wouldn't have been quite as what it is now, where this is literally a must-win game. Not only that, but you want to get the pig back. Plus, it's a big rivalry game. Like, Minnesota hates us. Now, I look to like this game, not so much like for me, like I get more invested with like the Iowa State game or maybe even the Iowa-Nebraska game, but this is still a big time game. And everything that happened last year, it has a lot of implications, and it's on NBC. It's a night game, so it's going to be fun. The weather forecast as of right now looks like might be some rain in the forecast, so that's something to monitor, keep an eye on. But we'll talk about that in our next episode. But yeah, it's going to be huge. It is, and we'll get more into it on the second podcast of the week. That will do it for this episode. We will be back later this week going over the Minnesota game. Until then, have a good rest of your week and go Hawks.